Are we live yet? Are we live yet?
How about now?
How about now?
Right now? It's official. We are live.
Nice.
So thank you all for joining. You know, this is a momentous, rarely happens. I talked this guy, Richard Robinette, my partner, into actually showing up and helping out.
So I show up occasionally.
Yeah, it's too infrequent. I mean, we should be dragging you up here at least every other day.
I'm a bit more introverted than that, and also that commute would kill me.
Touche. Well, it was really nice to actually see you this past week. It is very rare nowadays since Richard has moved across the country to this far off land called
I moved one state over.
So yeah, we're just totally buying a little bit of time, and then we're gonna get into let's talk crowdfunding. It's kind of exciting, at least in my opinion, because there's so many new options, strategies, things that can be done to be able to raise more, do more, kind of get around some of the rules and really maximize what you can do to find investors. While we're waiting just a couple of minutes before we kick this off, Richard, you know, I've told our backstory before. I'd love to hear a little summary, if you got it. How the heck did we get here?
How did we get here? I used to be a patent litigator, and I worked for a big law firm back in the day, 1,000 attorney firm. And I got laid off a few years into practice, and I said, you know what? I don't really like patent litigation. I don't really want to put on a suit and do a bunch more interviews to try to keep practicing this field. So I decided to try myself at real estate investing. And so I started doing buy and holds. I started doing wholesaling. I started doing sub-2 stuff. I started doing all kinds of real estate. And at one point, I was working with a mentor to do a development project in Arizona. And you were the securities attorney on that syndication or on that fund. So we met in putting that together and took a trip to Arizona to meet with the builders and look at the properties and whatever, and made friends over that trip. And you found out I was a lawyer, and a few months later get a phone call, and it's Nate calling me being like, hey, you're a lawyer, you want to do some overflow work for me? And it's like, sure, why not, I'll do some. And so I did that for a couple months, and then you fired me because I was terrible.
Deservedly,
Yeah, I'm sure.
Now he's not terrible, I promise.
Right.
But learning curve.
A few months later, it's like, you want to come back and try that again? Maybe like we'll start you at a lower salary and we'll work your way up. But so I was like, sure, why not? And part-time became full-time, and full-time became overtime, and overtime became profit sharing, and profit sharing became having an opportunity to acquire another firm. And now, God, almost 10 years later, here we are, and partners and kicking ass and taking names.
Flies when you're having fun, and
Sure.
It's been a fun journey. So welcome to the world of running, starting, growing, building, acquiring, entrepreneurship 101. So, well, thanks for showing up here today, and we're gonna hop in and do a little presentation on, really, like I said, some new strategies, opportunities, and ways to crowdfund. Crowdfunding means let's get out there in the world, start marketing everywhere, looking for investors, looking for investments. What do we got to do to maximize how we're bringing people to the table? If you have any questions or responses or comments, or you want to make fun of Richard's hair, it doesn't really matter. Throw it in the comments below, especially the hair. This guy's a hippie, so You know, I don't think he was allowed to get another job at another law firm, but we definitely are a,
This was the one firm that would take me.
you be you, we come as you are. We appreciate everybody, and even the hippies of the world.
Right.
So I'm going to go through a lot. Richard, feel free to just interrupt me if I'm glossing over anything.
Totally be the peanut gallery.
I appreciate it. You know what? Be those old guys in the Muppets that's just like talking. Exactly. You can totally be those guys.
There's nothing like a good show. And this is nothing like a good show. Ah!
You nailed it.
Impersonations I'm going to do today. Sorry.
Oh, thank you for that too.
Viewer count just went through the floor.
So, and kicking off, we already have a question, so we'll just cover this and then jump right into it. I just have a question about 506Cs. You can raise any amount of money in any 12 months. You're allowed to advertise in general solicitation. However, issuer must verify all investors are blank.
Oh God, the suspense is killing me.
I assume that next statement is accredited. What does verifying accredited investors actually mean?
So verifying accredited investors, under the rule, you must take reasonable steps to verify that anyone who says they're accredited is actually accredited. That generally takes the form of getting a letter from a CPA or an attorney or some other such financial professional that says, you know what, I looked at their assets, or I looked at their tax returns, or I looked at whatever other evidence they have that they're accredited, and I hereby certify in my professional opinion that they are in fact accredited, signed Joe Blow, CPA, or whatever, and poof, they're accredited. And you can actually have an issuer, you can rely on that for the next 5 years, as long as they tell you nothing has changed.
And I can tell you that 90% of the time, it's always a CPA's comment. If it's not a CPA, attorneys love to say no. Financial advisors, they got other deals. So always ask for the CPA. All right. And last comment, then I'm going to dive right into it. If you are interested, I've got a fun little goofy book that feel free to download. It's available on Amazon and blah, blah, blah.
What's the title of your book?
I don't even know. Let me see. It's been a little while. Here we go. Investment planning alchemy. So just kind of different ways to structure kind of the process and everything else. I go through the same thing every time. So this is the way to get it done so that I don't have to keep going through it. But just do that QR code. We'll connect the actual link as well to make your lives easy. And from there, let's get right into it. All right, we're going to be talking about crowdfunding. I am an attorney. I may or may not be your attorney, but the important thing is that you don't trust me. You're hiring an attorney to guide you because every situation is particular. So there's a CYA. As attorneys, we CYA every chance along the way. Today, we're going to be talking about, let's talk crowdfunding. So crowdfunding, I would say that in general, it means a bunch of different things. GoFundMe. There's a huge GoFundMe raising like $1 million for pay off Trump's fines. That's a donation. You don't get anything back. You're just throwing money for a just cause or for Trump's cause. You're sending money over for whatever that purpose is. There's also kind of the Kickstarter, release an opportunity, or your pre-sell a product. That's also crowdfunding, but it's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about equity crowdfunding, bringing in the cash to make your business deal, your real estate deal, your investor fund, whatever it means, getting out there and reaching into the crowd, marketing, advertising, reaching everybody to say, hey, I like what I'm doing. You can invest. Investing means, hey, you're actually getting a return on your money. If you're raising capital, working with investors, using even that quasi, hey, they're just private lenders. it's really important to pay attention to this stuff. We're going to go through a really high level. I'm going to really try not to get way too in the weeds or way too boring, because that's what attorneys tend to do. But you got to care about this stuff. It's important. If you're accepting investor money and you're not doing it right, best case scenarios is you get away with it. A successful deal is always a great defense. But anytime somebody's complaining, there's always the risks of fines brought by the SEC, by state securities boards. You know, cease and desist, one of those, hey, surprise, quit raising capital. And then in the worst case scenarios, we've got prison, and we all know let's stay away from those types of issues. Yes, don't Bernie Madoff it. That can be the end of the game. Now, of course, you're looking to raise capital. There's generally just a few times it's like, I'm looking to bring on an investor. You're either starting up a company, you're growing your business, or you're acquiring something. I don't care if it's a business, I don't care if it's real estate, but you're looking to bring in investors to acquire something. We generally call that a syndication. You can buy a business, and let's be honest, there's like $1 trillion at least of baby boomer businesses that are looking to transition to the younger generations. Amazing opportunities there. That's on the business side. On the real estate side, that's the way that these millionaires have been made. The Grant Cardones of the world, they do syndications. They do funds just like you can too. And, you know, I really like the guy. You know, we actually do a good part of Grant Cardone's deals. And I'd say he's an amazing guy. Richard, have you had to interact too much with him over time?
Not a ton. We did go to Cabo, and I got to spend a couple of days with him and his team in Cabo, and learned a lot there. And you know, he's savvy. Don't get fooled by the, you know, bravado and the, hey man, it's on my deal. Like, there's a lot more behind that than meets the eye. He's sharp. For sure.
Gotta respect it. So once you have identified, look, I'm starting this business, I'm buying this business, I'm growing this business. That's kind of step one of knowing what to do with it. Then we're going to get into the offering development. Now that's where we're actually working with you one-on-one, talking through the structure. One of the most important questions when you're developing your investment opportunity is always, where are your investors going to be coming from? And that's when we start talking about regulations. I'm just going to burn through these real quick, but there's actually some important reasons why we're burning through these, is because we're actually able to leverage multiple laws, multiple ways to crowdfund. And that's really the secret of how you do it bigger, better than any. The big daddy, Regulation A, you can raise up to $70 million. I'm not going to talk about that. It's a great strategy, but it's huge. It's expensive. It's time consuming. You have to get qualified by the SEC. That's not what we're talking about today, because that, I mean, budgetarily, and it's fairly reasonable, you know, expect to spend $75,000. We're talking about how to do it way cheaper, and to get launched, and to bring in capital, and to find investors. And so I'm going to touch on these laws to start with. We've got Regulation D 506C. I bring this up because you're allowed to advertise. That was a question that we just got asked about this verification process. As Richard was saying, and I will absolutely agree with, you got to take these reasonable steps. And usually these reasonable steps means that you're getting an opinion. There's online companies that provide it. But honestly, most of the time it's just, hey, introduce me to your CPA. Then you get the opinion. As I was saying, attorneys, we're a pain. Don't ask for us. Financial advisors.
Let me actually jump in here, because we have a follow-up from the same person that asked the first question. He says, let me get this straight. In 506C, verified does not need to use W-2. It can be other ways. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So accredited.
W-2 assets, not including your home property or your
Yeah.
residence.
The two most common ways people are accredited is either their income, which may or may not be on a W-2. It could be 1099. It could be ownership from a business that they have. But also you can be accredited based on net worth. And, your net worth is obviously not reflected on your W-2 or your tax return. So there's other things to look at, or even professional certifications. So if you've got a Series 7, Series 83, those actually allow you to be a accredited investor too. So there's a whole, if you get an offering, there's going to be a list of, do any of these apply to you? Boom, 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 boom. And it's all the ways you can be accredited, and you only got to have one. So
love it. We got another question from Rocky. What's going on, Rocky? Long time no chat. Can corporate America participate? And the answer is yes. There's different categories for corporations, for LLCs, but as long as the entity itself is accredited, and the two general ways that they're accredited is everybody that owns it is accredited, comes up a lot of time with LLCs, or if it's like a fund, as long as they have at least $5 million in investable amounts, then it's available. So we just got a massive influx of people at the moment. So I'm just going to quickly say, hey, if you want to find out more about this, go to the QR.
plug.
The URL will be in absolutely nonstop fun and games. That's what we do here.
Promote.
I mean, we're here to have fun, but at the end of the day, it's about education. So, and then when we talk about Regulation CF, you can advertise. You can accept anybody, an unlimited number of non-accredited investors, but you're only capped at, it can be up to $5 million per year. So a lot of the real estate deals we do are Regulation D. A lot of these smaller deals that we're doing is regulation crowdfunding. There are those limitations on those crowdfunding. For those little investors, they're only allowed to invest 5% or 10% of their income or their net worth based on kind of how much money they're making, what's their value. So important things to know. Definitely when we're working with you, we cover it more. But the substance of why we're here today is not that. It's actually one of the most amazing things, and nobody's been doing this in the past. So here's the new opportunity with crowdfunding, is to be able to simultaneously run that Regulation D 506C at the exact same time as that regulation crowdfunding. Now, if you think about what those rules are, under the Regulation D, you can't work with non-accredited investors. Great, here's a solution. Regulation CF, you can accept an unlimited number of non-accredited investors. On the regulation crowdfunding side, you're capped at $5 million. In the real estate world, in a lot of the capital raise or successive rounds of capital, $5 million honestly doesn't go very far. Sounds like a lot of money, but it doesn't go very far, especially in real estate. Don't worry about it. Now you can run that, the Reg D along with the CF, you can blow past that $5 million, and now you can raise an unlimited amount of money and bring in up to $5 million from the smaller investors. So that's where there's actually a huge opportunity here. By being able to do both, and to explain how it works, you are required to work with a crowdfunding portal. With regulation crowdfunding, it has to be a FINRA registered crowdfunding portal.
What is a FINRA registered crowdfunding portal?
Everybody sees these like investor portals. Invest now, contribute this $100. Invest in $500 in this business. A couple of great examples: WeFunder, CrowdEngine, Crowdfund My Deal. Just different platforms to allow people to invest. But then there's this next level of compliance and regulations. And that's where the crowdfunding, the investor portal, gets registered with, they call it FINRA. FINRA it's like the SEC of investment firms. It's not the SEC, but this is exactly where, the broker dealers, the investment banks, they have to get registered. They have to pay attention to these rules and laws and everything else. And these funding portals also have to. And to use this strategy, you're required to use a FINRA registered crowdfunding portal as well. And what it actually looks like is somebody goes to your investment page and then there's two buttons. One button says, well, I'm accredited. You click on that, the investor goes through to see the Regulation D investment opportunity. On the other side, we've got the non-accredited. That's the other button. Click on that. And now it says, well, you're seeing the regulation crowdfunding opportunity. So now we've got the same platform. Oftentimes it's on the issuers on your website itself. Click on the button, invest now. Click on the invest now. Are you accredited or not accredited? Touch those buttons. And the way that we structure them is it all goes into one company. It's just different avenues to that same investment. With the Regulation D, it tends to be a higher minimum investment. It may be, and on average, it's usually around $50,000. And they get a little bit of a better return, but they're putting in a little bit more capital. Then on the regulation crowdfunding and the smaller investors, maybe you have minimum investments of $5,000, $10,000, but you're giving them just a little bit less of the share of the profits. And that's the way you still continue to incentivize the larger investors along with being able to take in the smaller investors. And to just kind of touch on why do you want to do this? In America, on average, probably 10% of the investing public are accredited investors. That means that there's basically 10% of America can invest into a Regulation D. But then on the other side, we've got the regulation crowdfunding, that the other 90%. 100% of the investing America can invest into crowdfunding. And this is why combining the two, you get all the benefits of being able to raise as much money as you ever needed, along with you can raise the money from absolutely everybody. And because you can generally solicit, because you can advertise, you can do the webinars, you can do these seminars. Email
just commented that you've solved the puzzle.
You know what? Nobody is talking about these side-by-side investment offers and how to structure them and how to make them work. So that's where we're really sharing something that is unique in the market and nobody else is out there and providing it. So, if you're running multiple investment opportunities simultaneously, we call it integration. Do the regulators look at it and start combining things together? And if you're not allowed to advertise for one, you're generally not allowed to advertise for any. But for what we're talking about here, you can advertise for all of it. We just need to make sure that everything is properly disclosed. Everything's all included in there. But now's your opportunity to get out there and say, I've got this crowdfunding chance, this investment, and I don't care if you're super wealthy or if you're just a starting out investor. Now, all of a sudden, it's the proverbial democratization of investing because everybody can participate. And, we just got a question. Did the law change? The law changed in 2012. There was this Jobs Act, the Jumpstart Business Startups Act, the Jobs Act, and it created these new opportunities that didn't exist before. I'll tell you this, regulation crowdfunding, nobody used it. Primarily because, it was too small. It didn't make sense. You could only raise up to $1 million. That only goes so far, but then it got expanded in 2021 to be able to raise $5 million. Now, all of a sudden, it gets to be more useful. So the answer is, yeah, it's been around for a long time, but nobody did it. Now's the opportunity.
They also modified the integration rules and made them a little more flexible. So it made it a lot easier. So you can raise more with crowdfunding and also not have as much difficulty navigating the regulations when doing a side-by-side Reg D and crowdfunding. So it's the last 2 years or so, it's gotten a lot easier. 3 years. Wow, it's 2024, isn't it?
Man, time flies when you're having
a lot
fun.
easier. If we get in trouble, do we just blame it on Richard? Yes, absolutely. It's all my fault.
100%. I mean, I got to be honest.
So we'll take care of it.
I didn't blame him for everything as it stands now. I mean, my kids get an F in school. Damn that Richard. So feel free to blame him for anything negative that happens in your entire life. He's pretty good at it. So, but I do want to really mention, and this is important. If you're crowdfunding, any of you are looking to raise investor capital, you have to start today before you have your business started, before you have the acquisition target identified. One of the most important things that there is the ability to know who you're going to be asking for investment dollars. I refer to that as building your audience. And you don't have to wait until you have an investment. You can start building your audience today by getting out there on social media or all the emails that you have in your Outlook. Start doing these monthly newsletters. Let them know that, hey, I'm starting this business. Here's how it's going. Create that engagement and that interest. I'm in real estate. I'm looking to identify properties to acquire and invest in. Putting that out on social media, getting people to engage with you. Because at the end of the day, people do want to help you be successful, as well as they want to be successful too. So who you're engaging with, this audience that you're creating, when you do have your opportunity to ask for the investor dollars, this is exactly who's going to be investing at the same time. So it really is important information, and I can't emphasize it enough. Start today. Just let the world know what you're doing and update, communicate, share, do the newsletters on a regular basis every few weeks, every month. Just reach out and touch someone, because that someone may be and will be your investor in the future. When you're working on one of these projects, I just want to touch on, like, what does it actually look like? Under Regulation D, we have what's called a private placement. It's this disclosure document that's usually around 50 pages long. It discloses information about the investment, who manages it, the business plan, what the terms of the investment are, as well as 10 pages of here's all the ways that the investors can lose their money. That's some of the most important pages, because that's your CYA. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. And if things go sideways, which long enough timeline, I was practicing in Las Vegas back in 2008. Every deal that I was involved with went belly up. Not because anybody did anything wrong. It was the economy, stupid.
Thank you, President Clinton.
But when that happens, that's why we have these risk factors, and it just discloses, it tells people, here's the risk of investing. That's the purpose of this private placement. There's a similar document on the regulation crowdfunding side. It tells all the same information, but it's called a Form C. It gets filed with the SEC. Everybody in the world can actually get this document and see what you're doing. So that's where, at least the saying that I've always had, that is here to keep you out of trouble. Say what you're going to do and do it. If you're misleading investors, if you tell them you're going to do X and then you pivot and do Y, there's a lot of risk in there. But that's where you just need to have good attorneys behind you to make sure that you're doing everything right every step along the way. We'd love for you to work with crowdfunding lawyers and us throughout the entire process. But my God, no matter what, just have somebody, an attorney that has a bunch of experience, know-how, has gone through this hundreds of times to make sure that you don't have the fines, or worse, don't end up in prison. So that's really wanted to emphasize that besides this PPM Form C, this disclosure document, basically the rest looks alike. You've got these operating agreements. That's the legal agreement for how the business, how the investment works. And then, of course, you have the investor documentation. So we're going to continue on. Answer any of your questions. Please drop them in chat. We will go over them as well. Here's my information. Feel free to reach out anytime. We are absolutely here to help you all along the way. This is the fun part of life. Is I'm an entrepreneur, and I enjoy the creativity. I love, getting into the weeds with you of here's a goal. How do we accomplish it? Once we go through that, we call it the structuring process, then get to send it over to Richard, who manages our teams and makes sure that everything is done legally and properly. So here's the introduction to your team if we can help. And if we can't help, make sure that you got somebody on board that actually can. So we've got a bunch of questions popping up.
A lot of questions. This is great.
Yep.
So starters, Kennedy Jefferson compliments your books. It's a really great book, very insightful. Heart emoji.
I love it. I'm going to start crying. So,
show us the book again for people that have joined. What's your book?
My book, Investment Planning Alchemy. And if you follow this QR code, literally, it's just to download the PDF. We're here to help. We're here to guide. I want to see good deals happen, and that's where this really comes into play. So there's the opportunity. We'll drop the URL in the chat as well.
Let's see. Lita says she's been in 2 of Grant's deals. Grant is amazing. Excellent. It's good to hear. We have nothing to do with the success of his deals, but we do some of the legal work and disclosures and stuff on those. So it's good to hear that people are having a good experience.
Let me ask you this.
What's that?
Go ahead. I was going to ask you a few questions while we were going through these as well. I'm checking out the chat. Can we take funds without defining the asset?
Maybe.
Love that, Candace.
So very lawyer answer that.
That is the answer that all lawyers give.
Right. So when you're taking funds without defining the asset, what you're doing is creating a fund. You're going to have a fund. You're going to have a blind pool that's going to collect money, and then you're going to go out and find something to invest in. Reg D, do that all day long. Reg A, we can do that in some cases, for instance, for real estate. Reg CF, we've been trying to get a no action letter or an answer to see, what are the boundaries here? The regs are not entirely clear. There are some crowdfunding portals that are doing funds. Some crowdfunding portals will not do funds. So TBD on the CF side of things.
All right. We've got a Miss Wilton asking, what if you have a product that's not yet patented? What would you suggest in those cases?
I would call a patent prosecutor yesterday, and I would see if your idea, 1, is patentable, and 2, how quickly you can get it. They actually changed the patent laws it's probably been about 10 years now, to align American patent law with basically the rest of the world. And now it is a first to file system. So you can invent something and someone else can file the patent if you haven't. And so that's a big problem. If you've got a product you haven't patented it, run to a patent prosecutor and get that done. If you need a referral, give me a call. I used to be a patent litigator. I know lots of patent attorneys. I can help you out. Can't do it myself.
And
I'm not barred, but not patent barred.
I will also say this because it happens all the time. People ask about, well, what if I have a non-disclosure agreement or a non-circumvention, non-compete agreement? And I'm going to ask all of the investors to sign that. What do you tell somebody that says, I'm not too worried because I got this, we call it an NCND?
Yeah. Good luck enforcing that.
That's the biggest issue. But also, if we're talking about crowdfunding, you're never going to get the crowd to sign off on, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to disclose anything. I'm binding myself. So if you're trying crowdfunding, doing the non-disclosure avenue doesn't really work. So the Richard advice, get it patented, get it protected. That is absolutely the strategy to pay attention to.
Lita asked, will you guys set up the crowdfunding mechanism? I'm not exactly sure what you mean by mechanism. I'm guessing portal. And so, and we do two things with regards to crowdfunding portals. So we can, if you want to do a crowdfunding raise for your business, we can connect you with a portal that's registered with FINRA that'll host your offering and handle kind of all the compliance things that go with Reg CF. If you want your own portal registered with FINRA that you can put your other people's deals on, we can help you get through the registration process with FINRA. We've done it for several clients. We've got one attorney in our office who's just become a FINRA pro, and he just knows how to navigate all the ins and outs of getting that registration through. So we can help on both sides of that. If you want to be an issuer on someone else's portal, or if you want to start your own portal. Oddly enough, you cannot do your own offerings on your own portal. That is not allowed for some silly reasons. So you will sometimes see crowdfunding portals raising funds on other crowdfunding portals because they can't raise funds on their own, which is just a weird quirk.
I will say, when we're going through that structuring process, helping develop the offering that we talked about, it takes a village and a team to be successful. And so as part of that, we make introductions to the accountants, the auditors, who do you need on board to make it successful. Another question, where can I get help with the cap tables? How do you actually determine the valuation of a startup? Yeah, there's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of what kind of return are you offering to the investors based on future expectations. There's also what's called a 409A appraisal. It's not a full-blown certified appraisal. It's a shorter, more abbreviated process, but there are appraisers out there that will help you go through and figure out what the value is. Again, it's part of it takes a village, and introductions are needed. I love this one. I'm going to ask you this. Have you heard about the SEC recent report from Anthony? It recommends raising the accredited investor requirements to $900,000 or $3 million net worth. What's your thoughts on that?
This comes up periodically. It seems every few years is some proposal to raise the accredited threshold to some absurdly high number and to limit the pool of accredited investors. There's this idea that, well, when they first came up with the idea of accredited investors, a very, very small percentage of people even qualified, and over time that has grown. And they need to shrink it back down because for some reason this arbitrary number is more ideal than this arbitrary number, right? I'm hoping they don't go that way. The trend throughout the years has been to broaden the pool of investors who can participate in accredited only offerings. They've been liberalizing the rules gradually over the years. So to turn around and then, I'll raise it astronomically would be a really sharp change in policy. And I'm not saying that can't happen, but it would surprise me if they did something quite so drastic in the short term. So I'm also a
I
terrible
will.
soothsayer, so don't believe anything I say about that.
Yeah, honestly, it's been an ongoing conversation for a long time within the SEC, going through committees and everything else. At some point, they'll probably do it. But that's also why what we're talking about today is so incredibly important. Because here's your circumvention. Here's how you can say, I don't care if they change the definition of what an accredited investor is, because with this regulation crowdfunding, you don't care if they're accredited or not. It affects the amount that they can invest. But if they take the net worth from 1 million to 3 million, you can still accept the million net worth person, which now they can invest as much as they want. There will be some cap there, but it's a really important thing to take into account. That's why this that we're talking about, how to run the Regulation D side by side with the Regulation CF, is the solution if and when the SEC actually increases the requirements or that threshold for to be an accredited investor.
You two come highly recommended by the folks we were working with on this end. Awesome. I don't know who those folks are, but I guess they got good taste. So,
Well, amazing people. You should absolutely listen to them. All right, let's
cost for
talk.
a CF setup.
All right. Well, I would say that at a minimum, you really need to be budgeting about $10,000. That handles the legal side, the coordination with a crowdfunding portal side, and generally there are some financial statement requirements. I didn't dig too deep into it, but just kind of FYI, if you're raising for the first time more than $1,235,000, you've got to have these audited financials. Audited financials are sometimes ridiculously and stupidly expensive. We get them done for $1,500. A lot of other places, it costs $3,000.
For new
Again,
codes.
without doing anything.
Yeah.
Maybe not even having a bank account, but the CPAs, they know that it's a box that has to be checked. So they charge for that. You're raising less than that $1.2 million in change, you still have to get reviewed financials. Way cheaper, way easier, way faster. So, that $1,235,000, that's a huge number to figure out if you're raising more than or less than. And if you're raising less than, I think it's 124,000. It's like 124 or 127,000. If it's less than that, then you just do your own financial statements. You sign off and say, these are what I'm doing. These financial statements are accurate. And that's all that you really need. But there are financial statement requirements as part of the process. So really, to get launched, you've got the legal side. You have the crowdfunding portal side, and there's always onboarding and startup fees there. And then you have the financial statement side. That will get you started. But it's not the end of the day expense, because you have to figure, what does marketing cost? And when it comes to marketing, there's the two avenues of DIY. You can do it yourself, sending out some emails, posting some stuff on social media. Of course, doesn't cost you anything. You can start marketing for free. But then there's the other option. You can hire somebody. There are marketing agencies that strictly pay attention to and focus on crowdfunding. A part of, like, if you were working with us, maybe other attorneys don't really know their process, but that's part of the village. If you need introductions to marketing agencies, at Crowdfunding Lawyers, we'll make introductions to marketing agencies. In terms of budgeting, you really have to ask the marketing agencies and then realize that they're in it to sell a client. So ask, verify, don't necessarily trust. You'll have some that'll say it's 5% of capital, all the way up to potentially 20% of capital. What we've found is just doing these so many times and keeping a thumb on the pulse, you should be expecting to pay 10 to 12% of the cost of capital to a marketing agency. That it's not just paying them a fee. It is for pay-per-click. It's for advertising on social media. There's other expenses that go into it, but you've got to be able to budget for that amount to get out there and start advertising. So just something to really think about when you're getting out there to market around.
Let's see. Lita, I'm guessing, has an offering. Says mine's 100 pages and has been lawyered to death by Goodwin Procter. Standard.
I will say that a lot of law firms, like the standard used to be, it starts at $35,000 and goes up. I think our averages are more like, 15,000, sometimes less, sometimes a little more, but there's much cheaper ways to go about it. But kind of the secret sauce is this is all that we do. This is all that we know. So we have a more streamlined process. So we don't lawyer it to death like a lot of those big law firms do.
I'm not sure I understand that question. I just have I think started and stopped. So can an offering on 506c or crowdfunding have legal be paid offering? Paid by the offering as long as it's disclosed to investors? I think it means by the offering. Can a 506c or crowdfunding deal have legal be paid by the offering as long as it's disclosed to investors?
Of course, it's the cost of doing business.
Yeah.
Generally, what we'll see is people pay to get everything set up, and then they reimburse themselves.
Mm-hmm.
People pay to, if you're buying real estate, as an example, there's due diligence costs, there's investigations, you're hiring appraisers, there's costs to doing business. There's the legal costs of doing business, getting under contracts, getting financing going. However, once you can use the funds, because you raise $1, you can't necessarily use $1 right away. There's generally a process or a trigger to be able to use the money. But as soon as you can use it, you just reimburse yourself. So it, at the end of the day, is no money out of pocket, but you have to have some success in actually raising the capital as well.
Kyle here asks a great question. He says, what are the additional requirements or any special concerns to form a blind fund under Reg D versus a non-blind one?
Well, blind pools, there's 1,000 different ways to consider it. But if we're talking about real estate, there's a lot less rules there. If you're investing into the stock market, if you're investing into other companies, there may be investment advisor requirements. There may be investment company requirements. We're always looking for exemptions from the legal requirements, and kind of the go-to for the investment funds is as long as you have 99 investors or less. That's kind of the easy one, or you're doing real estate. Mm-hmm. Now, I like to state something on sellability. If you're newer, if you don't already have a huge audience, a track record, investors that know you, doing a blind pool, it's legal, but it's expensive. I mean, it's expensive in terms of you got to be marketing more and building that know, like, and trust audience. That takes time. If you're advertising and marketing a fund, the question is always, what have you done? How have you been successful in your capital raises? But the focus is on you. where if you're doing we call it a designated fund or a syndication where you're designating the asset. Now it's not just about what you've done, but let's pay attention to the industry that you're buying into. Where is that going? Let's talk about the demographics if it's real estate. So there's other things that come into account if you are designating what you're investing into. There's ways to structure those blind pools that it's absolutely legal. We do it all the time. But if you're just getting started, designating the asset, the business that you're investing into is much easier to bring the investors in.
Mm-hmm. How much time does it take to identify portal owner and set up?
If we're doing Regulation Ds on our side, our target is for you to be raising capital in about 3 weeks. Sometimes we do it faster. Sometimes it takes a little longer. Kind of just depends on your needs, your structure, how quickly you expedite reviews. And then on the regulation crowdfunding side, there's generally about another week, sometimes 2 weeks, because of the additional steps of getting the financial statements done. Just another little thing that has to happen. And number 2 is going through the due diligence process with the crowdfunding portals. Unlike a lot of the investor portals that they really don't care what you're doing, they're selling technology. With these funding portals that have FINRA obligations, they actually have to go through compliance. They have to do their due diligence, and that often takes a little bit of time as well.
Yeah, and just to expand on that, they're going to actually review your Form C, and then ask you questions about it, and they may even ask you for changes to it. They're also going to run a background check on every single officer and every single significant employee in the operation. They're also going to set up a securities escrow. The securities escrow company is also going to do a background check on everybody and ask questions and ask for representations or statements or whatever. In some cases, they may ask that an officer be removed. They say this person is too problematic because of their past. We need to actually take them out of the deal. So those are the kinds of things that can expand, especially if you have a large group that's doing this, or if your group has maybe a checkered past, that can expand the time it takes to get through all the compliance before you can actually go live with your crowdfunding offering. So a little bit more friction there than a Reg D. But it's not ridiculously long. It's not like a Reg A that's going to take you 6 months. It's
bingo. And 6 months is that Regulation A time expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Lita is asking what level of accounting firm is needed to audit the financials.
I think it's going to depend on, are you a company that's been operating for a decade and you've got really complicated structure and you got money coming and going in all kinds of places? Or are you a new co where it's just, we registered the LLC last week and opened a bank account at Chase? Those are going to take two different, types of professionals. And you're going to have CPAs that'll look at some companies and be like, we're not touching that. And others that'll, give you a sweet discount on a new co thing because there's not actually anything to audit. It's just a hoop that you got to jump through. So, it's going to be situations.
If you're an ongoing company, it can be unbelievably expensive. Actually, it can be cost prohibitive. New companies, startups, brand new entities get done cheap. You don't need to go and hire the Big Four. You don't need Deloitte to be looking at these. It's literally checking off the box because that's a requirement. So we try to find the cheapest, fastest option because that's all you really need to have at the end of the day. Here's a question for you. On CF portals, is it safe to invest into international projects?
Now you're going to make me scratch my head because can you even do international projects on the CF portal?
And the answer is kinda.
Of course.
The classic attorney answer. As long as you have the main office and there's operations in the United States, the nexus is with the United States, but maybe it's buying real estate in Uganda, whatever. That's fine as long as it's actually being operated in the US or in Canada. Those are the requirements, but you can't have some Bahamas company that's only Bahamas operation. That's where the CEO is. Then you're actually not allowed to do a CF offering, but you can absolutely do a Reg D offering.
Let's see. What are the regular reporting requirements after the deal is done and cost of reporting compliance?
With Regulation D, there's a best practice, but there's not a legal requirement. Best practices is you're reporting to the investors once a quarter, kind of have an annual supplement if you are raising capital on an ongoing basis. On the regulation crowdfunding side, there is also an annual filing that has to happen with the SEC. It encompasses a updating report of everything that's going on. If you're doing your best practices and creating the reporting to your investors under the Reg D, it's the exact same information that goes into the CF reporting. There's also financial statements that the management, that an executive signs off on. I certify that these are accurate, and that's all that has to take place. Those get filed with the SEC. I can tell you, some lawyers can charge an arm and a leg. We charge a couple $1,000s just to make sure it's all done properly. So you have that wide spread of who you're working with, and if they're the big law over lawyering 100 pages, it will tend to cost something extra. So it's not a huge heavy lifting. There is a process there, and there is actual required reporting.
Okay, this one's fun. How can you legally bring on someone who just has physical cash to invest?
By having them deposit physical cash into a bank.
Give it to me in a brown paper sack. Leave it behind the dumpster in the alley.
You joke, but I have
at least on the Reg D. So the Reg CF has to go through the portal. So they're going to have some means of electronically sending you the money. On the Reg D side, investors can invest with physical cash. They could literally just give you a bucket of money. You would want to paper that really well with receipts and with your subscription documents and everything to, make sure that's, shown. But, it wasn't uncommon before these portals got popular the last few years that investors would just send a cashier's check, with their subscription agreements, and the company would say, thank you very much, and give them a signed receipt, and that would be it. So no different with physical cash.
Well, we've just got a couple of minutes, so let me answer this in the funny way, because I've got a client that there was an investor that always invested in cash, and he'd have shoe boxes of cash at his house. And sure enough, that's exactly what he would invest with. And then our client would go to the bank with these shoe boxes of, here's all the cash I need to deposit. At the end of the day, the cash does end up getting into a bank. You also don't want to be a party to money laundering.
Yeah.
So
I'm not asking why they only have cash, but.
And you want to document it. I was handed this cash. Here's a receipt. Here's where the investor said this cash came from. It's absolutely legal to take cash, but you also need to make sure you're not breaking the law by doing it as well. So with that, thank you all so much for joining today. Truly appreciate you. Last final opportunity, take down our information. Feel free to reach out at any time. And until then, have a great day.
Take care.